can't mark a date and believe that that day you can turn it on. It's not about the date. It's about the commitment to yourself. It's about dating your purpose. It's about marrying yourself to your goals. It's about realizing that there is no one coming to save you but you. You have to be willing to put in the work. You must be willing to walk into success. You must be able to run past doubt. You must be able to go through the barbed wire of self-doubt and deprecating words that you have placed over yourself and tried to play it off like it was a joke when in reality you truly believe that you don't deserve things. It's time now for you to speak life over yourself.
Losing. Most of you hear losing and it makes you cringe, it makes you afraid, you fear being embarrassed, you fear being judged, you fear looking like an idiot in front of a bunch of people that won't matter to you in 5 years. But here's the thing, being willing to fail, being willing to lose will create such a competitive advantage for you because most people can't do it. Most people can't be seen falling on their face. So our options are to stay the same or to actually be willing to fail.
This is your time. You have greatness in you, and everything that happens to you, I've come to know. Some things happen to you, some things happen for you.
And that is what I do. And that is what you can do too. If you have something to change, if you want to change something, change it. Change it now.
Hi, Jason Burgett. Thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Typically, a lot of my guests lately, I've been asking that, or I'm not asking, but I've been sharing like, how is it that I know, everyone. So you and I basically met through work,
Right.
back a few years ago, actually. And so I remember us sharing a lot of like health stuff and fitness stuff. So that's how we kind of ended up, getting acquainted and becoming mutual friends and stuff like that. So it's really nice to have, to be able to talk to you because it's been a while. So first, I want to start off with sharing a little bit of your like background history. I mean, obviously, like, how did you get started into, well, I guess what specifically did you get started in? Was it jujitsu? And then, tell us a little bit about like, I don't know, like if I know you were overweight at some point. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to go like too back deep into the history. I know obviously like when I was really getting into like becoming an athlete and kind of pursuing, like the physical culture is like a way to get better to martial arts. I was like reaching out to anyone and everyone that I could talk to about, like anything related to like diet and exercise and all that stuff and being an athlete. And I think that's just where like we kind of gelled originally, is like you were a good source for me to be able to like bounce ideas off of and talk to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go too far back in history, I guess, but let's just say like for the majority of my life, I was very overweight and out of shape, and I never did anything athletic before. And I think like the major catalyst in my life was having my daughter when I was pretty young. I was about 22 years old when she was starting to walk. And I had this weird scare where she was like learning how to use stairs, and she was like running up and down the stairs, and I'm just doing the dad thing. I'm like chasing her up and down the stairs. We're having fun. And we got to this point where, she's getting up and down the stairs just fine. And I'm like getting winded and I can't like keep up with her. And I just had this like thought, like, what if something bad happened? I wouldn't be able to get to her. And at that point, it just kind of clicked for me. Oh my God, you're over 300 pounds and you you are out of shape, you can't really do anything. So I mean,
Right.
that was like a major catalyst for me to start like figuring it out. I had known
Mhm.
my whole life that I was obviously out of shape. Like I knew people who did sports and stuff like that, but it was just never for me. And so I just like at that point started trying to figure it out. I didn't really have any good mentors or anything like that. So I just started like researching things online and little by little making lots of mistakes. I, made progress over time. I gained and lost weight. I've been over 300 pounds a couple times in my life. And um,
Wow.
yeah, it's been an intense journey. I mean, obviously, like at one point, battled with some eating disorders when I couldn't figure out how to, lose weight and exercise properly. I blamed my diet and basically just stopped eating for a couple years.
Hmm.
Um, I lost a lot of weight that way, but obviously it's very unhealthy. And, I eventually just kind of forced myself into, the easiest exercise, which is like walking and jogging and running. And so I kind of, started to have a little bit of success with that. And I don't know, I think trying to figure it all out, I became a fan of martial arts. Like obviously the UFC is super popular and people know who Joe Rogan is. He was like the major color commentator at the time.
Hmm.
So like listening to him talk and watching fighters fight, just I don't know what it is about my personality. For some reason, I've never been envious of things that people own. I've always been envious of people's ability. Like still to this day, when I see people who can do backflips or walk on their hands, I like that is something that I admire.
Hmm.
So like watching the training and seeing people do that, I was always envious of those people, like their physical abilities and obviously their confidence and things like that. But my son started wrestling when he was 5, and so I always wanted to wrestle but never had it in me to do it. And so when he wanted to do it, I inspired him to just follow that passion and do that. And so I ended up like helping on the mats and helping with his kids wrestling club and stuff like that. um and so one of my son's wrestling coaches actually talked me into taking my first jiu-jitsu class. And I was like super scared. I was way out of shape. I was like 30 years old. I was like 260 pounds, pretty soft. I didn't have any idea about sports or athletics or anything like that.
Hmm.
So he talked me into coming to try a class out, and I went to check it out. And it was really funny. The gym that I went to check out was super small at the time, and it's actually really big now. It's where I work full time. But I came to watch a class and nobody showed up for the class. And so the coach was sitting on the mat, and he sees me sitting on the bench and he's like, "Hey, how you doing? Who are you? Like, what are you here for?" And I was like, "Well, I just came to watch a class. I wanted to kind of check this thing out." And he was like, "Well, nobody's here, so you are the class." And he kind of pulled me on the mat and showed me some
Oh.
jujitsu.
Hmm.
Obviously he beat me up a little bit. That's like, it's a combat sport. So for people who don't know what jujitsu is, it's the art of submission grappling. So if you only think of martial arts as striking martial arts, you're kind of missing part of the equation there. There's also grappling martial arts, which is very much like wrestling, so to speak. Wrestling is like a grappling kind of thing. But jiu-jitsu encompasses not only like the positional control of grappling, but submission holds as well, like joint manipulation and choke holds and stuff like that. And it's kind of it's part of a larger system. Like what mixed martial arts is today is like it's a combination of people who train grappling and striking martial arts. So jiu-jitsu, it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do. Like
Yeah.
basically the main analogy that they use is a 200-pound Rubik's cube that fights back.
I like that.
So it's a tough thing to kind of put yourself out there. It's not like a team sport where everybody is like backing you up and you're relying on other people to bail you out if you get in trouble. On the mat, you're all by yourself.
Hmm.
So you're just kind of working to not get submitted and also try to submit your training partner at the same time. And then, there's other things that come into that, like obviously being a good training partner and not injuring your partners and them not injuring you and that whole thing. But at the same time, if you're competitive and you do compete, then you have to prepare for those situations. Jiu-jitsu competition is definitely the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Well, yeah, I can imagine. Um, so first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing all of that and for being open. It's quite, I mean, just drawing back from like the point where you said that like it was like an epiphany for you, where like a wake up call about your daughter, and then that kind of spiral into like it's so interesting and amazing at the same time. And then just basically how you've gotten into it, it's like it's just wild but very awesome at the same time. And then also thank you for explaining what jujitsu is, because even I sometimes I'm like, I don't really know fully what it is. So thank you for that. Now, something that you mentioned was that you really are like inspired and motivated by people's abilities and stuff. So what has been like a challenge in, as far as like some of the movements that maybe you have um not been able to do, or been having to work extra hard at?
Oh yeah, for me, like almost everything. So starting to become an athlete at 30 years old and having zero experience and no know-how, I think like the biggest thing that I ever did was made the decision to pay a coach to teach me. And I didn't know it at the time, but as I look back on the years, that was probably the best thing that I ever did for myself, is like find somebody who knew more than me and be willing to pay for their knowledge.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. And I think that's just like a valuable piece of advice. Everyone's always trying to get the most for the least. And sometimes, like making an investment in yourself is the best thing that you can do. So that was for sure like the number one catalyst where I kind of like realized that, oh, I don't have to wait for a father figure to show up in my life or wait for some person to be wanting to mentor me. I can just go find someone who knows more than me and start to, obviously be part of their services that they're offering, which was great.
Hmm.
As far as like the whole thing for me, like just being able to be now 37 and be in the best shape of my life is pretty crazy to me. I mean, when I started jujitsu, I wore knee pads or knee braces every time I trained for like the first 4 years. I was so dysfunctional. I
Hmm.
had no idea of what like a properly working human body was capable of. And so for me, I think the biggest thing is just not only being able to maintain my like training volume over the course of the last almost 7 years, but being able to like get on the mat and do well at jujitsu or kickboxing, like whenever I choose to do the sparring. For me, I only spar kickboxing every once in a while, more risk of head injury and that kind of thing. But I spar jujitsu 6 days a week. I train 6 or 7 days a week sometimes. And for me, that's huge. Like I never anticipated that I would be able to have like a fully functional human body that's capable of getting up and getting down and wrestling and, stuff like that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's yeah, it's crazy how much of, just to hear that like you've come a long way. And I mean, even the beginning part where you mentioned, it was that's very deep, Jason, so thank you for sharing that. Now, with all of this that you're sharing, have you had any injuries at all?
I've had a lot of injuries actually. So martial arts is definitely a combat sport, and so
Yeah.
engaging in martial combat with other people, there's definitely injuries involved. And I think at the beginning, I used to let injuries kind of like depress me and slow me down. Um, and now, like, I think I've gotten to the point where I've learned how to train through and around injuries and gotten really good at recovering myself from injury. I mean, let's see, I was 7 months into jujitsu when I did my first tournament, which in my personal opinion was a mistake. For me personally, other people who come to the mat more prepared probably could compete that early.
Hmm.
Um, but I was put against like a very, very high level competitor, and I got my MCL torn about 80%.
Wow.
So that was a bad one. I was doing nothing for a couple months after that.
Yeah.
Um, but I've sprained and strained pretty much everything you can from head to toe. I mean, I hurt my neck really bad 2 times. I definitely like had some nerve damage and like lost some feeling in some of my fingers for a while. So I've been through some bad injuries, but nothing that wasn't recoverable. Like I only have one injury that I haven't like been able to come back 100% to
Uh-huh.
yet, but I'm still working on it. It's a very old injury.
Okay. Now, I mean, like you said, the type of sports, like it's almost like inevitable that's going to happen. But I guess, is there any type of things that you do or can do in order to maybe help prevent it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I've been beating the drum. So I've basically become a strength and conditioning and like movement coach because I feel like coming to the training with a fully functional body that's strong, flexible, mobile is going to help that, obviously like putting some armor on your joints and making sure that they're strong. And other than that, really the only thing that you can do is just like moderate your training and choose your training partners wisely. Obviously, if you're like 130 pounds, maybe don't spar with people who are over 200 pounds. As I was expecting to get, you know, maybe not stomped, but, I wasn't expecting to win for sure. And so winning that match, gave me a lot of confidence. And I actually did better in that tournament than I expected just because that happened. And then one of my other tournaments at purple belt is another situation like that. I was a no stripe purple belt. The guy that I was going against was a 4 stripe, and he actually got promoted on the podium that day, which is pretty crazy. So like he was
Mm-hmm.
about as close to his promotion as you get. But I lost that match like super close, 0-2. And it was, he basically won on kind of like, I don't want to call it a technicality, but it's just like a minor infraction in the rule set. So essentially, like he never scored any points on me during the match. Like it was supposed to be 0-0, but he won what's called an advantage, where he just controlled the center of the mat better than I did. And, turns out, he's a wrestling coach and he gets his brown belt on the podium. And I was like, I couldn't be sad about that loss.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like preparing for those competitions is very rigorous. Like not only are you hitting the mats and training your skills training, like the jujitsu training itself is many days and as many times as possible. But then
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, you have to prepare your body physically as best as you can. Competing in martial arts, I usually compare it to like a race car. So a race car needs to be as light as possible and as fast as possible in order to succeed in its category. Well,
Mm-hmm.
same thing with martial arts, like you're grouped by weight. So you have to be the best athlete you can be at that weight, as strong as you can be, as fast as you can be, so on and so forth. But like, so you're trying to keep your diet on point, stay lean, but also stay strong. So that's like a tough dichotomy to maintain, I'm sure, as you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so you don't have a whole lot of advantages other than your personal experience because their training experience is, supposedly similar to yours and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. So it's like there's a lot that goes into preparing for competitions. I put a lot of time into it, and I'm glad that I was able to succeed as much as I did. I definitely feel like I could have done better at some points, but I guarantee I could have done way worse as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you just, I mean, I love that you're like, you still are going no matter, like you said at one point, it's like you had a sort of a vision of where you wanted it to go. And you're like, I don't know if it'll necessarily get there or it'll go into that, but like you're still just going and it's like you just never can know how well you're going to do, until the day comes. So that's really cool. So what would you, I know motivation is like a big thing when it comes to sports and fitness in general. So where does your motivation come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great thing to talk about because I mean, I think there's two things when it comes to motivation that I love to talk about. Obviously, like I think your motivation should come from your passion. So like if you're driven and you really want something, then motivation, like sometimes you have to look for it, but for the most part, it's just gonna be there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Like I said in the beginning, I've always like seen people with a certain skill level and been I admire that. So for me, obviously, I train with people at pretty high levels who are black belts, brown belts, so on and so forth. And like they're really good. And so I get to see them all the time. And so every time I come to the mat, I'm just looking to get to that next level for sure. And I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just very passionate about the sport of jujitsu. Like it's one of my favorite things to do. Um, but I think the biggest, most important thing for me when it comes to motivation is realizing that motivation is temporary. And so like sometimes it comes and goes and it can be hard to find, and sometimes you just won't be motivated. So you have to be disciplined. And I think discipline is so much more important than being motivated, you
Motivated.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that, like motivation external, in my opinion, like the discipline thing is internal. So I'm a big fan of the planner. I do it old school. I've got like a paper style planner, and like I block out chunks of time that are for planning, and I put my workouts in my planner, and I think of them like meetings that I schedule with myself. So I'm like, okay, if I was my boss and my boss sets a meeting with me, then I got to be there, no doubt about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I look at my training. Like I schedule it all out, I plan it all out, and I think of them like these are meetings that I can't miss. So I show up on time, ready to get the work in, and I just go for it. And sometimes you get there and it's not your best day, and that's fine. But as long as you aim at perfection, if you miss, then you're good. If you don't aim at perfection and you miss, then you might not do so good. So like I try to like get the most out of my training every time that I train. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. But as long as I feel like I tried, then I'm making progress on the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I love like the whole explanation that you share. It's actually like pretty much how I see it too, but I love the way that you put it in perspective and in everything. So thank you. Something else, is like daily routine. I feel like, in order for us to, or a lot of us, we have like this daily routine that sets us up for the success that we're gonna.
The big guys, they can definitely, big people, not only men, but lots of women who train with us are very dangerous as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, you just have to choose your training partners wisely, know when you're overtrained or know when, you feel good and you can put some good hard work in. And just like, I think knowing your body, obviously, like addressing any kind of training, like my yoga teacher talks about it, my strength coach talks about it, my martial arts coach talk about it. Like you have to be able to listen to your body and kind of understand where you're at, what feels good, what doesn't, and then
Mm-hmm.
moderate your intensity accordingly.
Yeah, that's super important because I think a lot of people like it's like we're in this kind of a, I know it's not, I know this is kind of a little bit different, but in a sense, like we are chasing after health at the same time. It's not just for sport. And we forget one of the most important things is our bodies. So if we're not listening to our bodies, then how can, we help our bodies? And then that won't, your body, when it's not working, it's not going to take you anywhere in any sport. So that's definitely important. Now I'm interested into how many competitions then have you done? And then like just sort of walk us through like how the process is in preparing before a competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've competed, I want to say at least a dozen times, somewhere around 12, maybe one or two more than that. But Jiu-Jitsu has like a ranking system. So I mean, like traditional martial arts, they have the belts that you wear that close the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And as you progress through the system, you have different belt levels. So our Master Pedro Sauer, he's like the head of our association. We have a whole lineage thing. If you've done martial arts, then you understand that. But like in our association, we kind of urge our students to compete at least one time at each belt level, just so that you kind of understand where you're at. I've changed belt ranks a few times, and I've competed probably, I want to say, at least 4 times at each belt level. At white belt, my first tournament was pretty terrible. That's like the first belt. I was like 7 months in when I competed for the first time, but I
Mm-hmm.
was new and I had an ego still, and I was like, I thought I was tough, and
Mm-hmm.
martial arts teaches you, that you're tougher than you think you are, but not in the ways that you think you are. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But competing at white belt was very tough. I had some very tough losses, and I also had some very tough wins. I mean, I was able to get on the podium a few times, and I had one gold medal as a white belt, so that was pretty awesome. Like that was a big day for me for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Blue belt was probably some of my toughest competition years. So I was a blue belt for 3 years. I competed probably 4 or 5 times there, and I never won a single match as a blue belt, not even one.
Wow.
So that was hard. Like I would say, like I definitely had some like feelings about, was I doing the thing that was right for me? Was
Right.
I going to get better? Like that whole competitive psychology thing was very difficult in those years.
Mm-hmm.
But I did realize, going back and looking at it, I probably faced some of the toughest opponents ever in those years. I mean, some of those guys are still training. I competed for the first time as a professional in those years. Um, that was a tough one. I got like a lot of times in martial arts competition, because of the training, you're preparing for competition and you can get injured. And so people get injured and then people pull out and they got to find replacements. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got like a last minute phone call that was for a professional jiu-jitsu match, and it was for a weight class above mine. At the time I was competing 185. This guy was 205. And I didn't know anything about him, but I prepared in the best way that I could. And then it turns out when I get there, he was a D1 football player before he started training jiu-jitsu.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was a very tough match. I lost that one. And I took that one pretty hard, because I had been building all those years, to eventually compete professionally. That was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think when everybody hits the mat, that's kind of their goal, like, to succeed and win.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
And that's still my goal, but just in different ways in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm about to turn 37, rounding the corner on 40. Like my competition career might not be what I had originally dreamed it to be by now.
Really. Wow.
But I was just gonna kind of finish up like the
Yeah.
competition thing. Like so I'm a purple belt now. I've been a purple belt for almost 2 years. I'm like 7 years into the journey. But I competed twice as a purple belt, and those two competitions were definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Not only do these people like have the same amount of years experience as you, but they're the same weight as you. So like really the only thing that kind of shines is like who's been working harder than you. And like I had like definitely a win that I was super proud of in one of those tournaments. So you get these stripes on your belt. They're just little pieces of athletic tape, but they mean a lot. They're just like signs that you've progressed. And
Mm-hmm.
so at the time, I was a 0 stripe purple belt, and this guy that I was going against was a 4 stripe, which means he's like coming up on his next promotion. And I won that match, and I was like super surprised.
Accomplish these goals. So do you have anything particular as part of like a daily routine that you like always do?
Absolutely, 100%. I think like if you listen to anybody who's gone anywhere in their life, they usually, part of their foundation is like the daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, like I definitely have certain things that I do every single day. But I definitely also analyze like my weekly routine and my monthly routine and my yearly routine and make sure like a lot of that stuff is down. But I'm kind of a systems person. So I like to set up a system and just let that system run. And then I don't have to worry about so many of those things, as long as I have something set up. But as far as like the daily routine, I get up at 5 a.m. every day. I make sure that I'm up as early as I can be. I go to bed late sometimes because like my training happens in the evening a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'd like to get up earlier, but 5 a.m. is a tough one for me. So 3 days a week, I'm teaching a class at 7 a.m. So I do my morning routine and get myself good to go for that. And then the other 3 days a week, I get up and lift right away before I start my like regular morning routine, obviously like all the normal stuff to get ready for the day. But yeah, I usually try to organize like the next day, the night before. That's like part of my daily routine. And then
Mm-hmm.
like morning routine, I do everything the same, wake up, work out, and then get everything ready for the day and get myself to work. But I mean, for me, my daily routine is structured around my commitments a lot. So like not only am I working at the jiu-jitsu gym that I train at, but I also teach there. I have private lesson clients that I teach private lessons for martial arts. And then I also do, personal training. So I have personal training clients and I teach group classes for weightlifting as well. So it's like I keep my schedule super packed and the routine just kind of builds itself.
Got it. And that's awesome. Now, another thing, I know we've been talking about jujitsu, but I know that, I mean, I've also seen a lot of like your content on social media that like you're also really big into like kettlebells. So tell us more a little bit about that.
Yeah, so kettlebells is like so obviously, like I said before, I've like been interested in people's skills. So I'll take people that have skills that I admire and I'll start to break down, what they've done or what they do to acquire those skills and see if I can get myself on the same path and maybe
Hmm.
be able to accomplish some of those things. So a lot of jujitsu athletes and grappling athletes, as far as like high level wrestling and stuff like that goes, I was examining what they were doing and a lot of them are working out with the kettlebell. So, I'd worked with the barbell and the dumbbell primarily, for the first, I want to say like 4-ish years that I had been doing, being an athlete. And I had had limited success and failures with that. And so I seen these people working out with the kettlebells that I admired who are jiu-jitsu athletes, like Sean J. Hibero, who's like multiple time world champion, like one of the best to ever do it. Denny Prokopos is like another guy. He's a combat jiu-jitsu world champion, I think 3 or 4 times, and he's big into the kettlebells and all that stuff. So I was like watching these guys work out with kettlebells, but I didn't really have the time to interrupt my own training to start to like investigate it because I didn't have a kettlebell coach. There's nobody around this area that teaches kettlebells.
Hmm.
So when the pandemic happened and I was building my home gym just like everybody else, sorry to use the bad word, but yeah, so I bought some kettlebells and I just started like searching online content and figuring it out and working out with kettlebells. And then 3 years later, I'm here. I'm a certified kettlebell coach with the IKFF, which is the International Kettlebell and Fitness Federation. So that's pretty exciting. I'm really, really happy about that. And then obviously I'm doing the mentorship program with Phil DeRue. He's an exercise science sports coach and he primarily coaches combat sports athletes. And so that's, my experiences in martial arts. So I kind of learned kettlebells to get better at martial arts and I've been doing it. So it's like a major part of my training.
Wow,
And
I didn't know that kind of went hand in hand in a way.
yeah. Well, so kettlebells is like awesome because the main part of the modality with kettlebells is like ballistic exercise. And outside of the medicine ball, like there's not a whole lot of tools for ballistic exercise.
Hmm.
So it's just one of those things that like a lot of athletes don't train, but it turns out that for combat sports athletes who are doing things like kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo, ballistic exercise is one of the best things for them when it comes for like developing power and speed and athleticism and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, it's like a super safe training modality because you're not enduring super high loads. It's like the difference between training with barbells and the dumbbell. Obviously the dumbbell you can train a little bit safer.
So then what does that as far as like weights, like do you alternate between different weights and like what kind of movements are you doing with these kettlebells?
Yeah, so so in the kettlebell like arena, there's two main styles of kettlebell lifting, and this just comes from like the history of the kettlebell. But there's something called hard style, which is a style that's focused on strength, and then there's something called kettlebell sport, which is like the sport that derived from kettlebell training. There's like a whole history on kettlebells. I don't want to get into the weeds here, but essentially in like the 1960s, 1970s, the Russian sports scientists were trying to have the best Olympic teams possible. Get them to understand, then you have to know it even better.
Yeah, I like that. So true.
So then teaching just became like another layer of my journey. So in order to get better at jujitsu, I was like, oh, teaching makes me better. I have to teach
Hmm.
more. And then
Hmm.
I was able to kind of connect with people on a different way. Because I'm a firm believer and like a lot of people just phone it in, right? Like communication is the key. But communication is not the key. Comprehension is the key. You can communicate all day, but if nobody understands you or takes in what you're saying, then it's not going to matter.
Facts. Yeah.
So I focus like hardcore in my teaching style about the whole comprehension thing, and I do the best that I can do to help get my points across to people. And like teachings definitely helps me get better. So I've been a big advocate of like doing everything I could do to not only get better at my skills training, through the martial arts, but my teaching as well. And I've done multiple jujitsu seminars on just teaching martial arts. I'm actually like a certified instructor for kids martial arts and stuff like that.
Awesome. So then you've been working with I'm sorry, like the guy that you said, you've been working with this whole entire time then?
Yeah. So I train at Hampa Martial Arts. Our owner head instructor is Darby Hampa. He's been my main instructor for Jiu-Jitsu since I started day one.
Wow. Okay. So then tell us a little bit more about like, I mean, you mentioned like you're coaching and teaching all these, but I guess, like, for if anyone's interested out there, like more about like your classes, when, times, how do they sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hampa Martial Arts is like it's right off of Harrison Avenue behind the post office. The address is 4911 26th Avenue in Rockford, Illinois. Um, but yeah, you can call the gym. Most of the time, if you text or call the gym, you'll get a hold of me. Like I'm one of the main front desk people. I do a lot of the like customer service work and helping new students get enrolled. So like if anybody has questions, they can reach out to me directly. But we have classes 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. We have morning classes for kickboxing and jujitsu at 10 and 11 a.m. We've got evening classes all 5 nights of the week for kickboxing and jujitsu. So like it's a really amazing place to train. Like I said, we've got about 260 students. We've got over 100 kids, like about 60 or so for adult kickboxing and over 80 for adult jiu-jitsu. And it's just like, it's a great community of, people with the similar mindset of like trying to get better, either like more confident through their knowledge of self-defense, or obviously like better health through the fitness aspect of training martial arts.
Yeah, that's cool. And then also, what are you, I guess, what are you up to? What are some of your, future goals that you're open to sharing?
For sure. Yeah. So I have a lot of physical goals, obviously, for my martial arts training right now. Like I'm chasing my next belt promotion. I've been a purple belt for 2 years. So according to the quote unquote schedule, I've got at least a year left, as a purple belt. But pursuing my brown belt in jiu-jitsu is like a big thing on my to-do list right now for that. As far as my physical training, I'm definitely working on getting stronger with the kettlebell is like a big thing. Like I'd really like to get my numbers up for the weightlifting. And if you know anything about kettlebells, like there's a large technical portion where you want to be proficient with the lifts. That's going to help your numbers go up in the strength category. So like
Mhm.
it's very much like martial arts where your strength and your skills kind of match up. So working on that. And then I recently picked up the mace, is like another thing that I've been working with. So I work with the kettlebell, the club bell, and the mace now. So I'm like working on my skills with that. And
Cool.
then like the big goal, the big thing that I've been driving is my kettlebell gym. So I've basically worked out an agreement with my boss where I'm like subleasing space inside my gym. And I'm going to start group class programming. I already do like private lessons and one-on-one coaching and stuff like that for kettlebells, but I'm
Mhm.
starting to try to find like a more affordable way to bring, this to people. And I think, for that is going to be the group classes. So I, incorporated my business and I started a gym inside my martial arts gym and I'm teaching kettlebells. Right now I have like an athletes program that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. And there's like a bunch of different membership options. So people can kind of come and go as they want if they want to do drop-ins or they can do punch cards. And then there's also like a monthly membership, which makes it super like much more affordable. Yeah, and then I'm working the curriculum right now for my foundations program, and I'm getting ready to put that out there, but I think that's going to be like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday in the afternoon, probably like 5 p.m. On the Tuesday, Thursday, and then sometime in the afternoon on Saturday. But that's just going to be like a entry level program where people can learn like the foundational skills for lifting with kettlebells.
Awesome. I'd love to join that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to have you in. I mean, I have one member so far, but I've been training some people and I've got some like one-on-one clients that I've been working with, and like my mission right now is just to try to grow my gym and try to help people, get healthy and fit. And I recently possible, so they sent sports scientists to all the countries in like Asia and Europe to investigate how they were training and what modalities they were using to have the top athletes. And the overwhelming result was kettlebell. And so the Russians were like, we're going to take this thing and we're going to perfect it to the best that it can be. And they got all their Olympic athletes training with the kettlebell in like the 60s and the 70s. And out of that, all that kettlebell training came the sport of kettlebell sport. So you got those two main styles, there's kettlebell sport and then there's hard style. And I kind of use what's called like a hybrid style. I use movements from both. So I do go back and forth between like light weights, working on technical proficiency with the lifts, and then heavy weights, trying to develop strength in the exercises that I know I'm like super technical with. You obviously got to watch the risk with anytime you're using heavy weight. But yeah,
Wow.
so it kind of goes back and forth. And like in kettlebells, there's like 6 basic exercises that kind of form the foundation of the whole thing. And they're pretty simple. So squat, Turkish get up, clean, jerk, and then snatch, and then squat. I don't have my paper in front of me, so I can't count to 6, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
so there's
mean,
like,
I get the gist of it. Yeah.
so there's like 6 basic exercises. Oh, the swing is like probably one of the
Okay,
most
yes.
important exercises in kettlebells. That was the one I forgot. But yeah, so you're learning, obviously, like if you understand physics at all, a body at rest or a body in motion, that whole idea. So the kettlebell isn't a dead weight, it's kind of like a live wire. So what you do is you use your body to give motion and movement to the kettlebell, and then you have to learn how to like create momentum and then decrease it at the same time. So it's like anti-rotation, rotation, and like being able to produce and reduce force, and like changing through the different movement patterns. It's not like traditional weightlifting where you're just moving, in those basic planes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh my
it's
gosh.
so it's really good for athletes, like at the end of the day, when you look at a combat sports athlete, like they're a jack of all trades. They have to be very well-rounded. They have to be strong. They have to be flexible. They have to be fast. They have to be powerful,
Mm-hmm.
so it's crucial to work on all the special strengths as well as like your absolute strength and stuff like that.
Wow. Wow, Jason, this is so awesome. I'm learning so much from you today.
Good, glad to hear it. I mean, and
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about this because, like, just to circle back, because you asked me about injuries, this whole thing kind of came from me preventing injuries. I wanted to prevent and also have the ability to rehab because I knew I was going to get hurt training martial arts, especially,
Mm-hmm.
at my age, it's inevitable. So it's like, how do I, form my body in a way that's going to prevent me from getting injured and be able to recover as fast as possible? So
Right. So
it's
then you're digging up for, figuring that out. And that's how this kind of was born.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's how like the kettlebell program that I'm starting, came to fruition. And it's not only has it been good for me, people at my gym have seen the results that I've had, not only physically, I look better, but I perform better on the mat. I get injured less. And so I've started training, some of the athletes at my gym, and hoping to, get that branched out to the general public as soon as I can.
That's awesome. We'll talk more a little bit about that, but I
Yeah.
like that you just even said that like there's nothing here, and now you're bringing that, into our community. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah. And then so then how did you get into like teaching and coaching and stuff? Or like at
Yeah,
what point?
for sure. Yeah, so I started training with my instructor for Jujitsu almost 7 years ago. Their gym's about 7.5 years old. I started there when it was only like 6 months old. There was like maybe 10 students when I started, and now we have like 260, which is pretty awesome. But my coach at the time, he was teaching every single class, morning and evening, kids, kickboxing, jujitsu, everything. So he kind of got to the point where
Mhm.
he needed times sometimes, or like if he had an emergency come up and he couldn't be there for the class, I was just always there training. So he was like, hey, you're kind of one of my more experienced people right now. How do you feel about teaching a class? And I was like, scared as hell, man. But
Yeah.
but I always lacked confidence, and martial arts helped me with that, which is why I feel like forever indebted to martial arts as like a vehicle for self-improvement. I
Hmm.
evangelize that as much as possible for anyone who will listen. Like if you're looking for something to improve your life, like martial arts is the easy go-to thing for sure. But yeah, so he was like, hey, you want to teach a class? I'm like, sure, yeah, no problem. And I taught my first class as a 4-stripe white belt, so I wasn't quite like at my first promotion yet. And
Hmm.
it's really funny because in jiu-jitsu, whenever you see somebody new mess something up, you go, that's why we don't let white belts teach. But at the time, there wasn't many jiu-jitsu gyms in the area, and there wasn't a whole lot of people teaching, so like he couldn't
Yeah.
really like leverage anybody with experience. I was just kind of his best option at the time.
Hmm.
And so I figured out through teaching a little bit and fumbling through it and doing the best that I could, that teaching makes you better. If you have to teach someone something to put out on my social media pages, like I outlined, obviously like the motto of my business and our mission and our vision for the future. And I've got all that stuff out there. So I'm really excited about just sharing that stuff with people and helping them like accomplish their fitness goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just have to say too, Jason, that I'm really, really like proud of you, because I remember back when we were working together, and like you have come such a long way. Um, and it's really awesome to hear how you have evolved in just every area, of your life, I feel. And one thing I guess I do want to ask too is like, at what point did you, because you're doing this all full time, correct? Like you don't have any other like side or main job, right?
Nope, that's it. Yeah, I work full time for the martial arts gym, like customer service, front desk kind of stuff. And then one of my side jobs is obviously teaching at the gym. They let me teach a couple classes a week, and I make a little side cash off that. And then the rest of the time is my personal training. And then obviously any spare time I have left, I'm going to school for my mentorship program. Obviously, to be a strength and conditioning coach is like a huge thing, keeping myself learning there. And
Mm-hmm.
the little bits that I have left, I'm given to starting a business. So yeah, I've been pushing pretty hard to make a lot of stuff happen.
Yeah, I love that. And how, like, at what point or what drove you to finally like take that plug, to pull the plug to say, okay, I'm going to do this full time and not rely on like, our other normal, quote unquote 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. So I ended up in like I was married and I had kids in the past, and like I ended up in a bad relationship situation, and me and my ex-wife, we didn't work out, unfortunately. So we got divorced, and I was, like the sole provider of a family of 5 for a lot of years, and I obviously needed to make a lot of money to kind of, make all that stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
But now, since I'm divorced and I basically only pay for myself and my biological daughter, I didn't need to make as much money anymore. And my boss at the gym now, he was looking for some help. And so I was just like, I'm in. Obviously he didn't have the ability to pay me a whole lot of money, but I didn't really do it for the money. And I don't know why I changed careers. I don't know if it was like being a mechanic was fun, is a good job. I learned a lot, but like my passion was definitely, I feel like, with helping people. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why I became a mechanic originally, because I started on cars and then eventually got into industrial maintenance. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always just kind of had a passion for like being the change that I want to see in the world. Like I didn't have a lot of people helping me when I was young. And so like I've always felt like I needed to find a way to give back. And being a mechanic was like a really good way to do that. But working at a martial arts gym is a better way. And now hopefully like starting my own kettlebell thing, and I'll be able to, work a little bit more directly with, my clients. And I think my big goal is just being able to help people, and kind of be that person I never had.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember when we had the conversations at work and stuff, and we'd be talking about like all this fitness stuff, and I could just it doesn't surprise me to hear where you are now, just because like our conversations, it was like I felt the passion in you. So, you know, it was like it would have been a sad thing if you wouldn't have like pursued what you were meant to pursue and your purpose. So I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like, you helped me a lot. I mean, I was obviously going to you for information because you were doing things that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, you know, obviously, like any information that I can gather from you or anything I could learn from you was definitely helpful. And I feel like, you know, I was pushing myself in a direction, but it definitely changed at one point. You know, I adopted this kind of like personal improvement mindset. And I don't know where, at what point I just kind of figured out that, like, just like it takes money to make money, if you want to invest in yourself, you know, it's going to take that investment in yourself to be able to grow yourself. I don't know why. I guess I used to think you would just get better by existing, but that's not how it works.
Absolutely. And so as we come to a close here, do you have anything that you would like to share regarding just, I don't know, anything that you want to, you know, share with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like some of the things that are important to me, and I try to tell people all the time, is like, you're stronger than you know, and you're more powerful than you can conceive. Like, a lot of people are limited by the thoughts inside their mind, and it's just like it's a prison, man. I struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life, and
Mm-hmm.
I never was able to get out of my head on some of that stuff. But it wasn't until while I was busy overthinking, it turns out that I was overachieving the whole time and didn't know it. You know, and
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
I had no idea until one day it just came to me. And I was like, you know what? Why do I spend my time thinking about what other people think, or, you know, care about what other people feel about me? It's time to just like realize that you're better than you think you are, and you're doing better than you think you are. You just got to get out of your head. You know, the past and the future, they're just a prison inside your mind. You got to get present in the moment and like focus on what you're doing and find your path and your direction, and you'll succeed.
Oh, I love that, because I think I've finally come to that kind of realization myself in this past month. So thank you for it. It's really crazy that you say that, because it's really relatable to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Like, these are things that I'm telling people all the time. You know, people come to me and they want to accomplish their goals, and I'm like, all I can do is give you the things that have worked for me to succeed, and I can tell you the things that I've tried and maybe failed with, or tried and succeeded with, and you can do what you want with that information. You know, the big thing that I tell people is like, make sure you find something that fills the cup. You know what I mean? You have to find that thing that gives you what you need to be able to give back. It's very difficult to pour from an empty cup, right? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
everybody's looking for that thing to fill the cup, okay? But if you empty and fill and empty and fill, it's just this like never-ending progress process. So what you want to do is you want to live your life from the overflow. You want to find the excess, you know? So you need to make your life the thing that makes you the best that you can be and fills the cup up, and then create some excess and try to live your life and give from that area, if that makes sense.
Jason is preaching today.
I'm it's what I do all the time, you know, and it's like, it's not, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I just try to help people get better because I struggled for so long. And people come to me and they're like, how do I get better at martial arts? And I'm like, well, you're going to have to get better at a lot of other things first, but you can get better at anything that you want. You just have to kind of get out of your head and get yourself to work on it.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell like it's coming from the heart, because I mean, you have struggled yourself, so you know exactly, and you've been over to overcome a lot of stuff. So that is always going to be the most authentic, you know, type of help that you can give people too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it seems cheesy, but like, probably one of my favorite quotes is, be the change you want to see in the world. Like, that's been so instrumental in helping me become
Mm-hmm.
better, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And then other
Yeah.
than that, the drum that I'm beating is get fit or die trying. You know, I spent so many years dysfunctional and out of shape. And now, you know, starting at 30 and working up to almost 37 now, like every year I get older, I'm in the best shape of my life. So when people ask me
Yeah.
how old I am, I can proudly say I'm this old and I'm in the best shape of my life.
Hell yeah, I agree. I'm the same way. So I love this. I love the conversation today. So thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. I was super grateful for this opportunity. Like obviously you and I have had tons of awesome conversations in the past. You're like one of my favorite people to talk to, and I haven't
Oh,
had that opportunity in a while. Obviously
yeah.
like we chat on Messenger and stuff like that fairly regularly, but it's good to hear your voice and have a conversation. Like you're a great person to talk to. So I'm super excited that you're doing this. I think it's really cool.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, I feel the same way. I was excited to have you on. So thank you, Jason. I definitely wish you, you know, all the success and that you continue to push for. And I know you will, but like, you know, just wanted to say congratulations on everything. And I hope to be able to join some of your classes soon and just keep me
Yeah.
updated.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if anybody wants to check it